budget is generally considered to be an action plan for spending in the future. Based on the income expected, appropriation for the Federal Capital Territory, Nigeria's capital city, is observed to be a sub-national budget that caters for all sectors of the economy across the 6 area councils of the nation's capital. It is arguably one of the most important public documents, as it is translation of the administration's development goals into annual spending plans. The Federal Capital Territory Administration (FCTA) has proposed an all-time high spending estimate of about 3 trillion naira between the year 2022 and 2024. Over the years, the breakdown of the proposed budget is hidden from the public, a development that detracts from the credibility of the Federal Capital Territory Administration, the city and the nation's capital that houses the presidency, members of the Nigerian parliament, and plays a host to dozens of government agencies. The FCTA is expected to set high standards of transparency and accountability ethos. A visit to the Federal Capital Territory Administration official domain last offered visitors conversation on FCT 2022 approved budget. This was posted on the February 15, 2022. The approved budget post of 2022 reviewed the FCTA proposed spending on capital development main project, construction, sporting facilities, upgrading of streetlights, amongst few other projects that revolved around infrastructural development in the Federal Capital Territory. This only available information left the domain visitors stranded on FCTA proposal on other sectors such as education. The fiscal framework of the sum of 502 billion naira, 958 million was approved by the Nigerian Senate for the FCT. An overview of this 2023 FCT budget shows the sum of 307 billion 947 million naira, representing 61.21% of the actual fiscal framework, was earmarked for the capital expenditure, while overhead costs got the sum of 116 billion naira, representing 23.26%. This was the amount proposed to be spent on overhead cost. Meanwhile, the balance of the sum of 78 billion naira, representing 15.54% of the 2023 FCT, was proposed for personnel cost. Critical consideration of the performance of the 2022 FCT budget, an appropriation of 607 billion naira, 952 million and 23,000 was made to the FCT in its 2022 Statutory Appropriation Act, with an actual receipt of 233 billion naira, 476 million 857,000 naira, representing 38% of the budget, an expenditure of 200 billion naira, 818 million 799,000 as at December 2022. For the year 2024, the Nigerian Senate approved the 2024 statutory budget for the Federal Capital Territory to the tune of 1.282 trillion naira. This is an increase of 135 billion naira from the figure initially proposed by the Ministry of FCT. A further breakdown of the budget reviewed overhead cost of 373 billion naira, personnel cost as 140.9 billion naira, while the sum of 768 billion naira was allocated to the capital expenditure. Crucial to note is the 1 billion 300 million naira yearly matching grants FCTA has received up till 2022. This is not to mention its increase to the sum of 3.3 billion naira in the coffers of the Universal Basic Education Commission, earmarked to be given to each state including the FCT. All of these implies that other sectors such as education of pupils and students living in the Federal Capital Territory were not considerably planned for within these years and the past years. Again, the FCT appropriation on education were not made known in the 2023 and 2024 statutory budget for the Federal Capital Territory. There is a consensus among key stakeholders in the basic and post-basic education subsector of the FCT on the need for total overhaul in the provision of education for residents of the Federal Capital Territory. consistent strike action by teachers of public primary schools in the FCT, resulting in poor learning of pupils, dilapidated school infrastructure, deficit numbers of classrooms, demand for overbearing use of fee from parents, hidden charges on education of pupils and students are all evidences of this years of underfunding of the education sector across the 6 area councils of the Federal Capital Territory. However, the calls for intentional funding of basic and post-basic education in the FCT is not being complemented with an attitude of financial transparency and probity by the Federal Capital Territory Administration. The FCTA ignores requests for information on its budget details and finances despite the request being anchored on the Freedom of Information Act. Visitations to the FCT on inquiries into budgetary allocation of education across the area councils were turned down. A letter to the FCT seeking answers to issues of education funding in the FCT was not also responded to.
Sonya anyị niile banya na ọtụtụ mpụ na nrụrụ aka jupụtara na ụlọ akwụkwọ gọọmenti ndị nọ n'isi obodo Nigeria bụ Abuja, tụmadụ ka o si metụta mmụta na agụmakwụkwọ n'ogo dịgasị iche iche n'ebe ụmụntakịrị nwoke na nwaanyị nọ, ndị ntorobịa, ụmụ nwaanyị tinyekwara ndị nwere nkwarụ. Sonye ihe emereme Leaves and Worms na AD for TV radio ebe a na-eleba anya ma na-atụgharị atụmatụ gọọmenti dịgasị iche iche ka o siri metụta isiokwu a akpụ n'ọnụ. Na-esonyere anyị n'ihe emereme akwa izu ụka ọbụla n'akara mgbasa ozi anyị niile. Ọ bụ AD for TV radio na njikọ aka Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism tinyekwara MacArthur Foundation kwadoro ma hụ maka nke a.
We love AD for TV radio.
TV radio crew took to the streets to know FCT residents' opinion on how shrouded the FCT budget is. A respondent, Mr. Emmanuel, attributed the hidden nature of the FCT education budget to lack of transparency on the government and its failure to prioritize education above other issues on the budget.
If there is transparency in it, it will be made open everywhere. And stakeholders have a lot to do. Otherwise, FCT education should be made open for people to know and for government to actually prove that their level of work that to public to see. The most important thing is if they are even implementing up to 50%. I think the education sector will go a long way because government is supposed to make education a matter of priority for the future generation.
Another respondent, Mr. Abba, said the FCT education budget is hidden because of corruption. He claimed that stakeholders used the opportunity to siphon money allocated for the development of schools, especially in the FCT.
Because of corruption, is one of the reasons. They don't want people to know what is the actual amount that's budgeted for the FCT. It's not supposed to be hidden. It's supposed to be open for people to see for the FCT budget, most especially for the residents and the indigents.
Others who spoke to our correspondent said that the budget should be made open so that Nigerians can critique it and also ensure that money allocated for education in the FCT is engaged judiciously.
So if it is hidden for any reason, well, they know why it is hidden. You will not hear it from me. They know why it is hidden until they tell it. But it will be very fine if they make it open so people can critique it, make inputs and all that.
Well, I think the reason is best known to the Education Board, and they are in the best position to explain why their budget is not made public for people to be able to see and then to probably make contribution or input. Ordinarily, anything that has to do with the budget, whether at the federal level or at the state or even at the local government, I don't think it should be a hidden document. It should be in the public glare so that everybody can see it and know what obtainable in every sector, not even the education sector only. Every sector of the economy of the country and even in the states is as well as best to be in the public view.
The public servants that we have don't want to let us know or have this information so that we can question them and engage them on these expenditures they make.
I think people involved are the one making it so difficult for people not to see, because they know what they are doing. Some hands are inside, so they don't want to let people know.
I don't think it's right to even hide the budget from the people, because the money is meant for the people. So they should know the detail of every kobo the government is going to spend on education. Hiding it, I think, is a way of conceiving some things that the government don't want people to know. And I don't think it's the right thing to do.
An education expert and a focal person for the Civil Society Action Coalition on Education, Abdullahi Saleh, challenged the administration of the Federal Capital Territory to disclose the budget details of the Federal Capital Territory, which is expected to include that of education funding for the 6 area councils, as it is in line with a Federal High Court order in 2013, which ruled that details of all statutory transfers in the 2013 Appropriation Act be released to the public.
Well, the public service over time has seen this kind of method of operation, that public servants are no longer being accountable to the public. Public servants are now responsible to their heads, such that information becomes a problem, getting information, because of the level of corruption in the country. That's why we have the Freedom of Information Act, which is also not working. With the Freedom of Information Act, we cannot still get budget. I tell you what, for the first time I got the FCT budget, and how I got it was, it's not even the budget approved. I got it from somebody in the National Assembly. It was the paper that was presented, on the floor for debate. That's what I'm using. But to get the actual budget, the approved budget of the FCT has never been. In the past 4 years, I've been pursuing that. I cannot find it. And when I go to discuss with those in authority, they're not willing to even discuss it. They're not willing. They refer you to other officers who might not be available or do not have the information. Let me put it that way. So I think the level of corruption, we've assumed a very high level, such that people no longer fear what will happen to them, the consequences of these things they do, because it looks like there's no punitive measures for these actions. Therefore, they would rather keep the budgets into secrecy. I don't know if you've watched that even when they are asked to appear in the National Assembly, they go there and they don't come with any document, any reasonable document, such that after 2 or 3 days, the issue fizzles out, because they now do what the National Assembly again is demanding of them, to bring some kickback.
It is just sad and unfortunate that we have crops of leaders that don't see basic education as a priority and as an investment for our future. So the case of the FCT is interesting, because the budget of the FCT is passed by the Senate. It is only the FCT that does not have a legislative arm or an independent legislative arm. The 36 states have the State House of Assembly, but the FCT's case, it is the Senate that provides oversight or approves their budget, and then the FCTA implements this budget. That alone is a gap, because it does not provide a framework for legal and regulatory and any form of transparency and accountability. So that's why today you hardly find publicly available information about appropriation and releases of intervention or basic amenities in the FCT. And it took the Minister of FCT a longer period to even appoint secretaries, because again, the FCT has a minister that represents us. But in an ideal situation, we're supposed to have a mayor. In every other country, cities like the FCT has a mayor, because what happens is you can hold the mayor to account because there's an election that brings him into office. But the FCT minister, nobody can hold him to account because he's only answerable to Mr. President, because he's an appointee that sits on the Federal Executive Council empowered by the President. So it is a dilemma for people like us that work in the FCT and engage the administrators here in the FCT. So when you have an executive who literally no oversight is performed on, so ideally democracy, you have separation of power. But in this case, this person is super powerful and influential with so much executive power, with little or no oversight. And when the media or the civil society try to even ask questions, then they hit brick wall.
Experts say this is a conduct that betrays the mandate of the FCTA, which among others includes provision of education. Experts also say the availability of education budget in the accessible domain will further unravel issues of funding of education budget in the FCT and also present the budget as a working tool to education development partners.
Ku kasance tare da mu yayin da muke tattaunawa kan yadda matsalolin cin hanci da rashawa ya dabaibaye ingancin ilimi a makarantun gwamnati da ke birnin tarayya Abuja da ma Najeriya a matakan ilimi daban-daban, tasirin ilimin ga 'ya'ya mata da maza da ma masu bukata ta musamman, mata da matasa ma ba a bar su a baya ba. Kasance da kafar AD4 TV Radio don ilmantuwa kan manufofin gwamnati, tsare-tsare da ma yadda matakan aiwatar da su ke tasiri ko akasin haka. Yin tankaɗe da riraya na daga cikin abubuwan da muke baiwa muhimmanci. Ku tabbatar kun kasance da tashar mu ta AD4 TV Radio a kowane mako don sauraron wannan shiri. Bisa ɗaukar nauyin AD4 TV Radio da cibiyar Wole Soyinka da ke tallafawa binciken injin da tallafawar gidauniyar Makata.
The Basic Education Board is responsible for primary schools in every state. So in FCT, yes, the SUBEB is responsible for running the schools. So therefore, they're supposed to provide, they're supposed to present their budgets, and those items should be there. I have seen the FCT budget. I try to analyze it, but it's not detailed. They will never give you the detailed budget. But I have a budget that shows how much is there for personnel and how much is there for overheads. But then, with going into the details to see what is there for overhead is a humongous problem. It's a big challenge. Nobody is willing to unbundle that for you. So I think it's one area that we also need to look at and ask questions. I hear them say that budgets don't translate to funds. There can't be a budget, and then if funds are not being made available, then it's as good as useless. So yes, we also have a problem with releases. So the budget can be there, but the funds are not being released. And largely it's because we do not pay attention to education. We're not giving education the attention it deserves. You know, if budgets were being prepared the way they should, towards the end of the year, you call for a meeting of all the relevant stakeholders, being the head teacher and maybe inspectors, and do a review, an evaluation of the past, and come up with what should be done. I think we will have a solution to this problem, rather than sitting there in the office and assuming that if we budget and put this, government will not give. We've been doing this. They have not been giving, so it won't work. If you justify reasons for doing what you should do, I want to believe that those in the helm of affairs are sane people, so they will know what should be done, than transferring these costs to children and sending them out of school because they cannot afford it.
To Saleh and other stakeholders working to support provision of basic and post-basic education in the FCT, the continued absence of education budget as a working tool remains the major source of transferring education cost on parents.
It's one of the major issues. It's one of the major reasons why we're facing these issues. And I was in a validation of a document, inclusion policy on a policy on inclusion. And I did say that I want them to include in that policy that no form of charge, no form. I said it should be there. No form of charges should be should be charged. Let me put it that way, on any child, so that that person will not be left out of school. And one of the key stakeholders stood up to tell me that to challenge me that what if parents say they want to intervene here or there, would they refuse? I said no, that doesn't stop them from intervening. What I want is so that you do not insist now on that every child must do it because one parent says he wants to do it. Then you make it across board that everyone must bring money for chalk, or everyone must bring money for games, or everyone should bring money for arts. If you want this policy to work, you must include that, because many people, their first reason of being out of school is that fee, is that user fee. So yes, for not making the budget available, for not doing the needful within the budget, putting these details, somebody has to pay for them, and so it's transferred largely to the student.
PTA in itself is not supposed to even contribute anything. They are supposed to act as advisory to schools, not contributing financial state of that institution, because really the local government ought to have been funding the educational sector without any other assistance. When PTA comes in, they are coming in as support, but not to take over the responsibility of providing chairs, providing chalk, providing blackboard. No.
Yeah.
Experts say this further contributes to the increasing out-of-school children on the streets of the Federal Capital Territory.
The user fee, as I said, came about from poor budgeting or non-release of funds, and schools won't go on. So probably at some point there was a time when government didn't provide, and that gave an opening for schools to say, okay, let's do something quickly. Can you people provide something so that you can remain in school? And parents will willingly agree, because it's just a short-term measure. However, it's been allowed to linger for so long, and now it has become a right. Unless government sticks to the policy document, sticks to the policy, the UB Act, which states that education is free, therefore they should now provide for that, user fee will continue to be on the table. And largely, the biggest challenge is enforcing the policy, where it says that any head teacher who charges any fee should be penalized. The community, the parents, should take it upon themselves to ensure, again, that schools do the right thing. I was shocked when I went to a school here in Jabi as a parent. I had a daughter in the school. I went for the PTA meeting, and I realized that the PTA were conniving with the school to even share those funds. So the issues are many, unless we have a strong will to enforce the policy and to get a body that will really penalize these people. It will be a Herculean task to get out of this quagmire. Lastly, I think there are many other bodies, such as SACEFA, that are working around this. SERAP is one vocal voice, and many others who have come up with issues around this, but nothing has been done about it. You expect that government would react, but then nothing has been done. They've been labeled different names because they are working on what is there in paper. What are the policies then meant for if we cannot stick by them? So we cannot be crying foul. We cannot be crying that there are many children out of school. We are the ones that have caused it. We know the problem, and we ought to do something about it.
Crucial to mention is that the Federal High Court order of 2013, which ruled that details of all statutory transfers in the 2013 Appropriation Act be released to the public, specifically granted access to the details of the money released by the federal government to the Universal Basic Education, the National Assembly, the National Judicial Council, amongst others.